Welcome, everyone, to our Agriculture Committee meeting. Very interesting one today. We have the honor to have the Minister of Agriculture, a good maritimer that escaped the snowstorm today with me, Mr. Lawrence McCauley, to present his, I guess, to explain his letter of mandate letter, sorry, and also to talk about the main estimates. So we'll proceed with the Minister's presentation. You can have your opening statement, Mr. Minister, and then after that we'll go with the question period. So thank you.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Bonjour.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone.
And I'm joined by my Deputy Minister, Andrew Lyon, Assistant Deputy Minister, Pierre Corville, Assistant Deputy Minister Greg Meredith. I congratulate you, Mr. Chair, and all the members for being selected to this committee. While we all come from different backgrounds, our goal is the same: to build a stronger agriculture food industry in Canada. I am honoured to have been appointed Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food. It has been a busy few months on the job, building relationships throughout the sector, throughout the country, which is so critical. I have been talking to industry and my provincial and territorial counterparts. I have been speaking to our international partners, including the United States, China, Mexico, and the EU. I look forward to continuing discussions with my colleagues, industry, and Canadians to help improve the agriculture industry in Canada. We are meeting at a time when Canada's agriculture and food sector is in a relatively strong position. Net cash income is expected to hit a new record in 2015 of $15 billion and remain strong for 2016. The firm balance sheet is also strong, with a lower ratio of debt compared to assets. Meanwhile, our agriculture and food exports hit a new record of over $60 billion last year, and there are more exciting opportunities for growth to come. The purpose of our meeting today is to look at the government's financial estimates, as well as to outline the key priorities in my mandate letter. The main estimates outline the department's planned spending for the coming fiscal year. The estimates are a snapshot of the department's budget at a point in time. As members know, the department's budget can change over the fiscal year, depending on the changing needs and priorities. These changes are reflected in the supplementary estimates. Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada 2016-17 main estimates total $2.26 billion. The majority of the department's funding supports programs under Growing Forward 2. Mr. Chair, I'd like to give the committee a brief overview of how our investments are building a stronger Canadian agriculture and agri-food industry. Growing Forward 2 is a $3 billion investment over 5 years to drive the Canadian agriculture and food industry that is innovative, competitive, sustainable, and focused on markets. Of this amount, $1 billion is earmarked for federal programs. The balance, $2 billion, is cost-shared funding with the provinces and territories on a 60-40 basis. The provinces and territories use these resources to meet the regional needs of their industries. In addition, this year's main estimates reflect $1.3 billion available for business risk management programs. Our investments under Growing Forward 2 are helping our agriculture and food industry stay on the cutting edge of innovation, marketing, sustainability, and competitiveness. Turning to my priorities, as a central one is supporting science and innovation. Science is the core of Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. For over 125 years, research has helped build a world-class agriculture and industry in Canada. I've had the privilege of visiting some of our research centres across the country. It is amazing what our scientists do, helping farmers cut expenses with crops that are resistant to certain diseases and insects, and helping them ensure efficient use of inputs such as water and fertilizer, which is good for the environment and for the producer's bottom line. Through investments in science, our government will help the sector stay on the cutting edge. Some examples of recent going forward to investments in science include almost $8 million with Saskatchewan for livestock and forage research, $3.6 million to help cattle producers harness the power of genetics and open up new markets. The main estimates also outline capital investment of over $30 million to boost capacity at our research centres, as well as other improvements to greenhouses and laboratories. Innovation is critical to delivering the government's strong environmental mandate. My mandate includes the environments, helping the sector adjust the increasing number of issues associated with climate change, and addressing water and soil conservation issues. Farmers are already making great progress. We all know Canadian farmers are incredible stewards of the land. A recent study shows that the Canadian cattle industry has reduced its environmental footprint over the past 3 decades, while increasing production by 1/3. Growing forward too is also supporting environmental action on our farms. For instance, we recently joined with Alberta in announcing funding under Going Forward too to support solar power on farms. These kinds of investments will boost Canada's reputation for environmental stewardship at home and abroad. Along with innovation and the environment, another key priority is trade. The government supports trade because it creates good jobs for Canadians and contributes to economic growth. We want to be sure our farmers and processors reap the benefits of a growing world population. So in these estimates, you will see resources going to help our farmers and food processors grow their markets through investments under agri-marketing programs. In the past few months, we have worked hard to open markets for our beef farmers in South Korea, our beef and pork producers in Ukraine, our pork producers in India, our livestock genetics in Georgia, our beef genetics through our investment of $2.6 million in the Canadian Beef Breeders' Council. Our farmers can compete with the best, but they need a level playing field to do so. We took a big step in this direction in December when the United States repealed country of origin labeling for beef and pork. I am pleased that the USDA has now officially repealed the legislation. This is positive news for our pork and beef industries. The government also strongly supports supply management. Having worked both in the dairy and potato business, I have a good appreciation of how important supply management and trade are to our farm businesses and to our economy. We will continue to advance all Canadian agricultural interests as we consider trade matters that include the Trans-Pacific Partnership. The government is committed to hearing from Canadians on TPP before determining whether Canada will ratify the agreement. And we have committed to a comprehensive debate on the TPP in the House of Commons. I have already been discussing the TPP with farm organizations to get their view. Our message is clear. The Government of Canada fully supports supply management. We understand the importance of compensation to the supply managed sector should the TPP enter into force. We will continue to engage with farmers on this important issue. Just over half the money budgeted on the main estimates is available for our business risk management programs. Farmers look at government to help them manage risk and recover from the impact of disasters and disease. For example, in January, we announced investments to help the tree fruit growers and maple syrup producers in Nova Scotia recover from weather-related damages. The estimates include an increase of $5 million for agri-risk initiatives. The initiative is focused on helping to develop new and innovative risk management tools for Canadian farmers. We are also moving forward on improvements to the advance payment program. These changes were requested by farmers and are now in force. They will make the program more user-friendly and flexible while covering most commodities. The Prime Minister has asked me to engage with farmers and provincial governments to ensure our business risk management programs are meeting their needs. Before I close, Mr. Chair, a brief look ahead. In the coming months, I'll be working with the provinces and territories to position the sector for even greater success through the next agricultural framework. We'll be listening to farmers, processors, and Canadians. More and more customers around the world are looking for the great products coming from Canada's farmers and food processors. The new framework will help ensure the industry can meet and benefit from the growing demand. For the longer term, we're also committed to beginning discussions with governments and industry on the direction of food policy in Canada. So, Mr. Chair, I hope this has given you a sense of my priorities as Minister. To sum up, I want to listen, work, and invest in our agriculture and industry. Thank you for the opportunity to visit you, and I'm pleased to be here. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, thank you, Mr. Minister, for outlining how this government plans to support and guide agriculture in the future, and for the overall view of where the picture where it is today. So we'll start with the questions. Monsieur Gourde, vous avez 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
6 minutes, Mr. Gould. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. I'd also like to thank the Deputy Ministers. This is always a very interesting exercise for our committee when the Minister appears. I believe we do need to focus on the question of milk. I believe you're aware of the issue with Americans who are very imaginative when it comes to creating products that can be sent to Canada. And that's happened here with the major processor, as we heard during our last meeting. Diafiltered milk is not used in the States to make cheese. It was invented to cross the Canadian border. It's a scandal. Minister, we need to move forward and cross that border because this is a product that was invented specifically to cross the border. Not a single American eats cheese that was made with diafiltered milk, and Canadians shouldn't have to eat it either.
Mr. Gould, and I appreciate your question, and certainly have been basically, I guess I can say, I inherit the issue. Over the last couple of years, there has been an increase in diafiltered milk in this country, and we're certainly aware of the concerns regarding the use of diafiltered milk in the making of cheese. We're looking at an approach that ensures that the cheese compositional standards are clear for everyone. Under the standards, diafiltered milk was never meant to be allowed to use as milk. Canada recognized the importance of effective import controls and administered its imports in accordance with the international trade obligations. Milk protein substance, including diafiltered milk, can be imported under Canada under NAFTA as long as they contain 85% or more milk protein on a dry matter basis. The industry has been engaged in negotiations, and there are differences of opinion on the way forward between some producers and processors and between some dairy farmers in different provinces. We are working with the industry and intend on having further discussions on this issue to ensure the standards are clear. But quite honestly, Mr. Gould, I understand the problem, and as you are aware, there are discussions taking place with the processors and the industry in different provinces. And what I am trying to do and have tried to do is make sure, since I became minister, that all the sectors understand the regulations and what standards are required. That's in fact what I've done to this date.
Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Sur un autre...
Thank you, Minister. Now, on another topic, the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, as well as the Free Trade Agreement with Europe, our Canadian beef and pork meat industry is very happy that those agreements have been made under our government last year. Nonetheless, there's the issue of harmonization of slaughterhouse regulations. It seems that in Europe and elsewhere, they might use some slaughterhouse regulations to prevent our meat from being exported. Is there a way to harmonize regulations with other countries when it comes to slaughterhouses so that our meat is not blocked? The country might say you can bring in 60 million tons of beef, but it's not recognized because you don't necessarily have the same regulations and standards when it comes to Canadian slaughterhouses. Could that cause problems when it comes to ratification?
Concerns, and of course, as you're no doubt fully aware, what my officials are doing, they're working on an ongoing basis on this plan in order to make sure that we can as a country accomplish what we have achieved in a trade deal, and to make sure that the regulations are well understood. And Deputy, if you'd like to add to that, but that's basically what we do when there's difficulties, and there always is, no matter what commodity you're talking about, and I think you're fully aware of this too, whether it's dairy, grains, oilseeds, or whatever, there's always difficulties and difficulties with regulations. And sometimes this agreement on regulations, but then something else enters, as you're fully aware, enters the deal and causes some trade problems. As we're dealing with. And I think continually it's a problem with the countries that are involved in trade deals. So we want to make sure that we work to make sure that they're harmonized as well as possible. But my officials have been working on this, and perhaps you can add to that. But, Deputy.
Merci pour la question. Et nous avons.
Thank you for your question. We have exchanged letters with the European Union on the topic of technical barriers to Canadian meat. We also have a working plan, and we have met with some success in that area, but it's an ongoing process with the EU. We've also held meetings recently with industry representatives to discuss this topic as well. Thank you, Mr. Gould. Unfortunately, that's the end of your time.
Macaulay, for joining us today, and to your officials as well. We certainly appreciate the work that you're doing to support growth of the agriculture sector, especially in my riding of Fundy Royal in New Brunswick. Aside from talking with participants of the industry, I also spent quite a bit of time talking to consumers. And one of the areas that they have brought up to me is concerns about the Canadian Food Inspection Agency. And that's largely due to some of the stories we've seen in the media. Now, I know that CFIA falls under the Minister of Health, but I'm wondering if you could update the committee on your work with the department to strengthen our inspection levels.
Thank you very much, and I can assure you that before I came here, I dealt with CFIA. Sometimes I had some difficulties with CFIA, being a potato producer and calling them in. But yes, we hear there are difficulties probably with inspections and having inspectors available and to get the certificate if you're wishing to ship, particularly in Western Canada, some products across the border. But in general, from what I understand, there are basically enough of inspectors, but the problem is, and I expect that this committee will probably be interviewing some farmers and farm groups. And the interesting thing is, do they wish to have CFIA officials available around the clock, and if they are, that costs more money, and is that the direction they wish to go in? There's things like that that we're going to have to deal with. But we have a CFIA official here, and if you wish to elaborate more on that. Where's my CFIA? There. I'm sorry. But basically, mostly we had meetings in Eastern Canada in the last few weeks, and CFIA is generally well accepted. But in some areas, this having 24-hour availability for CFIA people is wanted. But it's something I think that could be looked at by the committee. Go ahead.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you for the question. Just briefly, the last time I had the pleasure of being at this committee, there was a question with respect to the agency, and we did follow up and provided the committee with a reflection of the focus that the agency has placed on frontline inspection in particular, which you will recall from the information we've provided has demonstrated quite a significant increase in inspection. We recognize that in the agency, even as we have dealt, as all departments have, with cost containment, that the agency has made a very firm commitment to protecting frontline inspection, and the numbers bear it out.
Thank you very much.
Great. Mr. McCauley, could you expand for us a little bit? I know part of your mandate is to develop a food policy, and something we're very interested in. And if you could elaborate a little bit on where that is and what that looks like for you.
Well, I thank you very, very much. And yes, it is. And it's something that will be developed down the road, not at this moment, but what we want to do is deal with the provinces and territories and stakeholders in order to put a format together to make sure that we're able to come up with a proper food policy. It won't be something that'll happen very quick, but it's something that has not been done yet, but will be put together with myself and other ministers across the country, but also people involved, like I got a daughter that's a nutritionist, and there's very little I do that's right. So, I think that probably, we need all views, but we want to do, and then decide just the direction we want to go in. But it's important, but it's down the road.
Okay, thank you. Great. Are we good?
We're good. Okay. So, Madame Brosseau.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Minister. And thank you, Deputy Ministers, for being here today. The question I wanted to ask was already posed by my colleague, Mr. Gould. I do appreciate the answer, but it's not entirely clear when you will act. When it comes to dye-filtered milk, it's a serious problem. It's $1,000 of loss per week for producers. You said that you are currently negotiating with industry, but sincerely, I feel that you need to play a leadership role in this file. It's been more than 100 days since the election. You have not fixed this, and even though it's a challenge, I believe there's a consensus about what we should do. The government needs to apply the existing standards and regulations. So I just wanted to ask when you will act in this file when it comes to dye-filtered milk in Canada.
Thank you very much for the question. And I do understand that you're quite concerned about this issue, as I am. I milked cows before I came here. In fact, a few years after I came here. I understand the issue, but there's a lot involved in this issue with different provinces. And no, just to make sure the record is straight, I am not negotiating with anybody. It's the industry and the manufacturers that are in discussions. But I am not negotiating with anybody. My job is to make sure that they understand the regulations. Both sides understand the regulations, and that's basically what I am doing at the moment. But I can well understand how concerned, and I saw it a number of times in the House, you're concerned. But it's a process, and I'll be more than pleased when we get to whatever the concluding move will be in the process.
Avez-vous comme un timeline? Je sais que c'est une problématique qu'on a.
Do you have some kind of timeline? I know this was a problem that we faced with the former government. It's been a problem for 2 years. But I think everyone agrees that the federal government should play a leadership role in applying the rules. It doesn't seem that complex to me. Do you have a better idea of when you'll be able to move forward, or is that still up in the air? Because every time I go back to my writing, I meet dairy producers. It's not just numbers and statistics, it's faces, it's families. The supply-managed industry, the dairy industry, has suffered negative impacts after with what's happened with the CETA and the TPP, and we still haven't heard much about compensation for the industry. So I'll leave that there. Sorry, but I find this very frustrating. My next question, which is very important. There's been a lot of loss in the area of labor in Quebec. In 2014, we lost about $51 million in the province of Quebec. I met various industry representatives. Everyone agrees that the government should do something. Recently, your government implemented an exemption for seafood processors in the Atlantic region. Can you tell us if there will be other measures for other industries like mushrooms, vegetables, and beef in Canada?
Thank you. This is an issue that I see in my province too. But as you know, there was a great problem with the temporary foreign workers over the last couple of years. And what's going on, it's not my ministry, of course. As you know, it's under Minister Mihaichuk, and she has indicated they're going to conduct a review. It's my understanding that what we did for the fish processors, and that is just something that the previous government had done the year before, and we had just arrived on the scene, and this happened, which I believe was a good thing to do. But there will be, the whole program is under review. And what we have to make sure is that sectors across the country, which I hear from, like the beef processors outside of Calgary and the processors in Quebec, all across the country, it's vitally important that we hear from the sectors and make sure that this program is put back in an appropriate manner. It's very difficult if you have the product, you got the product, you got the market for the product, but you can't manufacture it in your own area. Understand fully. But I think you also understand the problem that was faced. And what we want to make sure is that this evaluation of the program is done properly, and that the people that are concerned about wherever it is in the country, it's awfully important that you contact myself, if you wish, or any member of the government, or any member of the House of Commons, because you have positions right here and other places to indicate your support for these types of... Yes, you're going to say, I don't want to stop you.
I just have one quick question. 'Cause, it was 30 seconds. Really? Please? Okay. We talk a lot about CFIA. They were in the news a lot. At another meeting we had previously, I asked some questions about CFIA. I was at committee when we had the Safe Food for Canadians Act, and there will be an evaluation, but it's not until 2017. Would you be interested, or are you open to the idea of supporting having an assessment done sooner? Because there have been so many articles and a lot of surveys, and Canadians are really, really worried about CFIA and how we are inspecting food here in Canada.
Well, of course, if there's ever any problem with safe food, immediate action is taken, no matter what government was in place in this country. That's the way it always has been, and that's the way it will be with us, too, with this government. But as I told you, I had heard from a number of stakeholders right across the country, and there was some concern in Western Canada, and possibly in Quebec too, about CFIA. But I'd let my CFIA official probably, if you want to expand on it. But first of all, food has to be safe. Go ahead.
Thank you, Minister. And certainly, as you've noted, our priority continues to be food safety. The issues with respect to resources that have recently been reflected in the media, as I noted in my earlier response, the agency continues to place its focus on ensuring that frontline inspection continues to be protected, and that will continue to be our approach.
Thank you, Mr. Myers. And now, Mr. Joe Pescilito, your 6 minutes.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Mr. Minister, I'd like to thank you and your officials for appearing before the committee here. As you know, the agricultural food industry is a strong economic driver in my riding in Steveston, East Richmond, and all across BC. Whether they be potatoes or dairy, chickens. I like to say that in East Richmond, we have the best blueberries and cranberries in the world. I know you may disagree with that, Minister, but that is my position, and I'm sticking to it. I'd like to hear from yourself and perhaps from your officials what the ministry is looking at to make sure that our industry remains on the cutting edge internationally, because we're competing against the Americans, the Europeans, and other folks around the world.
Thank you very much. You're competing against everybody. And everybody is striving for the cutting edge, and that's where you have to be. When I arrived in this job and was shown a number of things, including the growth of the middle class in the Asian community, they want to eat as well as you do, and they want to eat the quality food that you do. What it told me is that what an opportunity we had in this country to produce whatever, long as we do it right. But you have to stay, as you indicated, on the cutting edge. And I had also, and that's what I am attempting to do, to make sure that we do that. But when you go across the country and look at our science centers and what they're at, like producing new seed that we talk about in 2014, the big growth in production on the prairie. Well, that was because of scientific work, too, of course. And the seeds continue, and they continue and continue to produce more with less. It's like no matter what sector you're in, and with the beef producers, I think it's 30% bigger production and 15% reduction in the footprint. So, you know, this kind of thing is, and that's a big issue now around the world when you're trying to sell products. But my job is to make sure, and our job as government, wherever we are, is to make sure that we, to the best of our ability, with the funds that we have, make sure that the scientists are able to stay on the cutting edge. And there are some things that are not that expensive. That what it was, fall forage or whatever it was. What was they cut down a different type of barley in the fall, and then swathing. I forget the proper name, but swathing. You know, that itself saved $1 and some cents per head per day. You know, it's so important that you're able to have the people that know what they're doing work on this. Now but there's also in the laboratories they're able to develop, resistant seeds that are resistant to different diseases, different insects. It just beyond, and that makes us more competitive worldwide. We have to produce the best product, the cheapest way that we know how, to make sure it's done right. And that's what our job is here as a government, and that's what I intend to try to do.
Mr. Minister, last week I met with Kent Mullinex. He's the chair of the Agricultural Research Department in Kwantlen Polytech Institute. The folks at UBC may differ, but I think it's in my riding, and I think it's a phenomenal institution. And I also believe it's on the cutting edge of research on crop rotation, on seeds. what kind of help would the ministry provide, not only to himself and his department, but all of the young farmers who are looking at getting into the industry?
Well, of course, with the opportunity that's available to us in this country, with what we have to deal with, the scientific community we have, and the big market for our products worldwide, what we have to make sure, no matter who it is that we provide the best product in the most reasonable way possible. And that's what our job is here as a government, and your job too, to make sure that the scientists have the there's an end to the money. You can't provide endless money, but you have to be able to make sure that they have the right, like analyzing fertilizer and understanding what plants will absorb and what they will not absorb and how much water. And this is all so important to the environment. It's just amazing what they do. It's just amazing. And what it does in the end is the farmer can produce the crop with less money. And many times a bigger crop. That's what works, and that's what will work worldwide, and that's part of what we have to try to do. Not to mention there's no end to what you can develop, too, in the resistance line. Like if you can have, like I grew potatoes, and if anybody ever grew potatoes, they know what the green peach aphid was. Just a curse to the potato industry, and it costs every farmer a lot of money. But if you can develop, and I don't know where we are in that specific green peach aphid, but if you can produce something that would be resistant to that, you save the potato grower a lot of money. And that's, in fact, where we have been and where we must stay in this country.
I'm sorry, Joe, I guess that kind of takes it. So, Pierre, vous avez le plancher pour 6 minutes.
Pierre, you have the floor for 6 minutes. Thank you, Minister. I'd like to thank departmental officials as well. My riding is mainly rural, more than 80% arable land in my riding. There's about 1,000 farms of all kinds, and 13,000 direct or indirect jobs depend on the agriculture or agri-food sector. So it's an extremely important sector of the economy for us. So there was a question about diafiltered milk, and I have a sub-question about that. During our last meeting, milk producers, people from the Canadian Milk Producers Association, stated that responsibility for this is being delegated to the Canadian Milk Commission. Responsibility of ensuring that regulations for cheese composition are respected for our consumers. So what is your position? What is your opinion with regard to what those witnesses stated?
If I got you right, you were saying that the Canadian Milk Commission were going to enforce certain regulations. Was that what you were saying to me? No, it would be CFIA that would do that. That's who would. And what was the rest of the question? Huh? Yeah. It would be the CFIA that would enforce these regulations.
Okay. Considérez-vous qu'ils ont...
Do you feel that they have the necessary resources to carry out those inspections, to ensure that the composition is correct?
Indications there for what requirements they have to do in this country up to this point seem to point that they do have enough of staff to take care of the issue. Now, there's always different polls that are organizations that indicate one thing or another, but the information that we receive is that CFIA has the manpower in order to enforce what they need to enforce in this country.
Merci.
Thank you. Now, on another topic, earlier you mentioned the issue of temporary foreign workers. I know you're currently discussing that with the your colleagues at the Labor Department, this is constantly an issue that is before us. The fact that there is a large enough number of foreign workers that, for example, in my riding, it's the biggest apple-producing riding in Quebec. Could you tell us more about the discussions you've been having with your colleague in that area? Apple producers in my riding are worried about seeing whether those workers are going to, from Guatemala or Mexico, are going to arrive early enough to help them with their harvest.
And I fully understand your concern too, and we have it in our area too. Now there was a provision made for the fish processors, and that had been done before. But as you know, we have indicated that that a commitment to review this program, and we will. As I indicated, Minister Mahaichuk is in charge of this, but she will review, put a review in place, and it will be a place to make sure that that what you feel, what your apple producers feel, what your beef processors feel, what your whoever works in this country feels, it's vitally important. There was a problem with this program. It's a good program, in my view, whether I should be saying that or not, but it has to be run properly. And what we have to do is make sure that we put that Minister Mahaichuk gets the information where the work, like I said before, if you got apple growers or you got processors of some kind in your riding or anybody else's riding, and we do not have the workers to do the process, and you got the apples or you got the potatoes or whatever it is, but you don't have the manpower to run the plants, it's vitally important that this message is steered directly to this review, because we want to make sure that it's put together properly in the way that will. We certainly don't want to hurt the economy. If you feel it will help the economy in order to have these workers in place, it's very important that you do that. And I think it's very important for everybody to do that, because it gives the minister then some, no matter what minister or what government it is, if you have some feedback from entrepreneurs or stakeholders across the country and you make different changes, then you got something to indicate why you made these changes. And that's, in fact, what she needs and what the government needs in order to put this back in place. You know, I cannot tell you what it's going to be. I come from an area where there was quite a few temporary foreign workers used, but I suppose I have to be a little careful expressing my full view on it, but it's an open discussion. And it's important that you and your stakeholders do that.
OK. Merci, Monsieur le Ministre. Merci, Pierre.
Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Pierre. Now, Mr. Workington.
Thank you, Minister, for being here. I do appreciate that you've taken the time to come. I know you're very busy. Minister, farmers expect that you will be their voice at the cabinet table. We've heard that again and again, and many farmers and farm organizations have already made or attempted to make meetings with you in your office in the hopes that you will defend their interest at the cabinet table. So I think it is distressing when we hear from you that if people have concerns with regards to certain issues that affect the farm, that they shouldn't talk to you, but they should talk to some other minister. Today I asked you a question in the House of Commons with regards to labor issues for on the farm, specifically as it relates to the slaughter facilities across the country. And you didn't take the question, and I understand that may not have been your decision, but the Minister Mahaichuk did take the question, and she just basically said, don't worry about it. I made a speech in Winnipeg last week. Everybody that listened to that speech was reassured that she wasn't clear about what the issues were, and she certainly didn't have a solution. And so, Minister, if you're going to be the defender of farm families, if you're going to be the defender of the industry at the cabinet table, what are you saying as it relates to TFWs and the necessity for labor in slaughter facilities across this country and on the farm? What are you saying at the cabinet table? Because the rumor is floating around that the fisheries minister has more pull with your seatmate than you do. and he got his exemption last week. You didn't get yours. What have you said so we can put this rumor to rest and assure farms and farm families that you've got their back?
I thank you very much, and I appreciate the question, and never would I want to indicate that you shouldn't bring it up here. In fact, you should bring it up everywhere you can, including in the... Go ahead.
And what will your answer be? I'm just asking for what your answer is. What
well,
you're
if
going
I
to say
was
at
the
the
one that
table.
was going to fix the program, I would have an answer for you, but I would be in great difficulty if I indicated what the answer was, understanding there's another minister in charge. But what you did today was, I think it was a good thing to do, and I think it was a good question. And
Well,
I think it was also important.
I appreciate that. We didn't like the answer, and if you don't have an answer, that's fine. I appreciate
Would you
that.
just let me indicate?
Sure.
Truly, when you bring that forward, it's not only her that hears it. It's important that you bring that forward and indicate that there is a problem. It's no different. It's question period, not answer period.
I think it should be answer period. Let's try to get some answers. When it comes to diafiltered milk, the dairy producers also believe that that you're the person that they should go to for a solution when it comes to diafiltered milk. Today you've said and made it very clear that you don't have an answer and you don't believe that you're the person that will find the answer, that it's somebody else that will do that for you. So are we to hear, because we've heard from everybody that they assume that you'll be the guy that will fix us, are we to hear today that you don't have an answer and you don't intend to fix this?
Well, I would be awfully disappointed if you felt that I couldn't do something, but the fact is what I explained here and how the process was working and what happened. I think you are fully aware that this was an issue that I inherited. It had escalated substantially in the last 2 years, and I guess there was a fair bit of pressure on governments over that period of time. And I indicated clearly to you what's taken place. The processors and the industry are in discussion.
We heard from them last week, and they seemed to indicate that the solution was in your office, and that if you would just sign the solution, we'd all be taken care of. But obviously, there's some miscommunication. We'll try to get that transcript of that meeting to you, just so that you can hear what we heard as well. Minister, you have a number of staff positions that you've filled in terms of assisting you in hearing from farm families, and
I would like to just respond to what you said.
Sure.
Previous to that is that if you have different groups, and this is what I'm indicating to you, there's different groups and there's different provinces and there's different things being said. What you can do, you can bring, I don't care what transcript, and I know if it's said here, it's a transcript, and I'd be pleased to look at it any time, and anybody can, there's different views, but what I'm trying to say is I'm not trying to do anything except resolve the issue in the most productive way possible. And when you hear from all sectors, then hopefully we will be able to resolve this issue.
The dairy producers are looking for your leadership on this, and I know that you're a busy man, but hopefully you can lend your time to that as well. Produce growers across the country are concerned about the necessity to resolve the PACA issue with the United States for exports to the United States. Are you aware of this? Have you lobbied the Minister of Industry to correct this issue, to resolve the issue when it comes to exports to the United States and the protection for those produce producers that would like that protection in the months to come?
Well, of course, you're aware that we did have a special deal, and your government lost that special deal.
We did.
I'm not trying to blame anybody.
Minister, there was a commitment made by, I think, all parties to resolve this. Now, you won the big prize, which was mean that you have to do the job, and
well,
so you've been you've been there for 100 days,
you have
and
to
so
accept what you accept, and I accepted the diafiltered milk issue, and I accepted what took place in this, and yes, I will deal with each and every case as well as I can.
Can we expect that the PACA issue will be resolved tomorrow in the budget? That the PACA issue will be resolved tomorrow in the documents that will accompany the budget?
You would have to ask the Minister of
Have
Finance.
you lobbied
I think you're fully aware.
Have you lobbied the minister for this issue to be resolved in the budget tomorrow?
What I've done with the minister, I've certainly brought the discussion to the minister and a number of ministers.
No, I guess we're just done. Thank you very much, Mr. Warkentin. Mr. Longfield, you have 6 minutes.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and Mr. Minister, it's great having you here. It's wonderful to see you again, and staff that are all here. I think we're all trying to work together to solve issues around agriculture and agri-food for Canada, for our economy, as well as the people that are feeding families here and around the world. I've got a question from both sides of the farm gate, if you will, where we're looking at our trade, we're looking at our efficiencies within Canada, and on the producer side, using science, trying to increase production with less inputs. You've covered that well in your introductory remarks. There's also cases around 40% food waste in the supply chain and at consumers' tables. How can we use big data on that side of the farm gate in terms of science and analyzing what's going on to be most efficient as we can on that side of the gate, and then on the processor side of the gate as well, to say it's a business that we're trying to run here. As a country, we're trying to have our businesses efficient, cost-controlled, competitive, and we need to bring that together with the provinces, which you know is a challenge sometimes, but I think you've done well. You were in Guelph last week, and you met with the provincial organizations, federal organizations, producers, farm associations. We even had some farmers there that were talking about their challenges. So maybe if you could expand on how you see your department working on these market opportunities, using the scientific information that we have available on both sides of the gate, and then trying to pull it together with the provinces and the different stakeholders. Not an easy question for 6 minutes, but if you could just maybe highlight what you're seeing so far from your talks.
Lloyd, are you talking about within Canada or outside of Canada or both?
Yeah, I know that going outside of Canada is a different ministry. I think if we can do it internally well, then we can do it externally well. So it is kind of both.
But I think it's fair to say what took place over the years in this country with agriculture and agri-food is being science-based on whatever we do, whether it's low-level press, whatever it might be. It's science-based, and whether you're in this country and particularly outside of the country, when you have science-based, we have people, if there's a problem, and not always is it easy to resolve. There's problems within the country, and there's problems with other countries that you have deals with. But when you have the science base, and many countries are attempting to adapt to our science base, and that's why you have no problem going to any country and defending the product if you have the science base behind it. And the same in this country. I think Canadians do and should feel that any food they consume is a safe food to eat, and that's vitally important.
The science I'm more referring to is not so much food safety, although, as you said, that's the first most critical step.
You remind me, Lloyd, when I wasn't sure where you were going, and I shouldn't say this either, I suppose, from the gate to the plate, but being a farmer most of my life, there was no problem at the plate, but there always was a little problem at the gate, and now I'm the minister, so I'm supposed to fix that. But you know, it's so important that the men and women that do the work in the agricultural sector receive proper remuneration. Am I in the area? I'm not sure.
Yeah, and I'm thinking of using science to be more competitive, to grow more crops with less inputs.
Sure, yeah. For sure. No matter what product you're talking about, whether it's grains or tomatoes or whatever it is, if you're in the biggest deal in this country is, as I said before, to produce the product the most efficient way possible, the most environmental way possible, and to make sure that the fertilizers are used properly. And I've just seen, I had a scientist explain to me what these new telescopes they were putting in the labs, which I understood not too much about. I'm not a scientist, but amazing what they can do in that area too, and to know what certain plants will consume and what you should put on, and the water you should use. So with all of that, Lloyd, what you're doing is making sure that there's less dollars being spent by the person that's producing the product and producing every bit as good, if not better, product, and probably And many times, like I referred to the grain crop and the trouble the government had in 14 over moving that crop, though there was some other issues. But the thing was because we have such a great scientific community that the production was so big. But it will continue to be bigger and bigger, and that's what we must do.
Well, and for the record, just want to compliment you and your staff on the meetings last week where you did bring science to the table. You brought the provincial organizations, you brought the farmers and processors, and we even had some civil groups there that were making sure that what was being done was socially acceptable as well. So congratulations. I think if that's a sign of what your ministry is going to be doing, then looking forward to working with you.
Well, Lloyd, it has to be, and when you're dealing with, I meet with different countries too, and with China and with, we're all around the world, particularly in the Asian area, we're going to be able to provide great quality food and a great market to ship it to, and that's what we're doing.
Thank you, sir.
That's simply not complicated. It's complicated, but if you know what you're doing and the scientists, it's amazing what they can do.
Thank you, Mr. Minister, and thank you, Mr. Longfield. So we will. I think Mr. Walkerton is going to take Mr. Arnold's time. So we've got roughly 5 minutes.
I was having such a good conversation with the minister. I didn't want to pass the opportunity to continue the conversation. Absolutely, absolutely. Well, around these places, eventually comes back to us. So, Minister, I did want to chat with you a little bit with regards to your staff. You have a chief of staff of which there was questions asked when she was first appointed. As a matter of fact, there were experts that described it as a grotesque and flagrant conflict of interest. Now, obviously, your chief of staff does have significant. She has a significant relationship with one of the largest egg producers in the country. Can you update us in terms of the provisions that the Ethics Commissioner has and the guidance that the Ethics Commissioner has provided your office with regards to how your chief of staff should conduct her engagement with yourself and with stakeholders on issues that she may be in conflict on?
Thank you. And I would expect that you would never want to have somebody working in the department that do nothing. I don't believe you would want somebody working for the Minister of Agriculture and Agri-Food not being able to work there because they might have some involvement in agriculture. I know you don't mean that. I know for sure you don't mean that.
Minister, I do. I do believe that if somebody is found in a conflict of interest,
it's better. Be too.
And if that's the case, then I think that's something that the Canadian people deserve to know. Minister, can you provide what you have undertaken to ensure that your chief of staff is not found in a conflict of interest?
Well, last year...
And I should just state, so that you don't have to repeat what you said, if in fact she has to do nothing to recuse herself, to ensure that she's recused from any place that she'd be found in conflict of interest, I would hope she would do nothing, and I'd hope that you, as a minister, would find somebody that could do the job if she wasn't able to.
Well, as you know, and thank you, I know it's been of an interest to you since she came.
It's been an interest to Canadians.
Some people, yes. Some people.
Yeah.
She's subject to the Conflict of Interest Act the days that she starts working for me. And as you know, that, of course, the Ethics Commissioner will... anything that she provides will be complied with fully.
So the Ethics Commissioner has not set up a screen yet?
There's a screening process put in place by the department, and I'll let my deputy indicate, means that they put it in place. We want to be sure that everything is done right. We want to work. My job is to work and make sure agriculture and agri-food and the farmers and ranchers in this country get the best representation from the government possible, but again, I want to make sure that all this is handled carefully.
My time is short, Minister. I'd love to hear the screen.
But I just want to be sure that you understand fully.
Oh, I do.
My biggest interest: make sure that we follow the rules, which we will do. We can play games, but we have to follow the rules, and to make sure that the people involved in agriculture and agri-food in this country receives the proper remuneration for the work that they do. That's my job, and that's what I will continue to do. But the deputy can fill you in on what was put in place, I hope.
Well, thank you, Minister. As the minister points out, since the appointment of the Chief of Staff on the 4th of January, the Chief of Staff has indeed been subject to the Conflict of Interest Act and all of its provisions, and that means that she, like all public office holders, have an obligation to arrange their public affairs.
I'm sorry, my time is very short. I understand what the obligations are. I've read the Act. What I want to know is what provisions have been undertaken to ensure that this Chief of Staff, with her unique position, with her unique ownership of over $40 million in egg quota, does not find herself in a conflict of interest.
So, as I say, the foundation for the obligation is the Conflict of Interest Act. In addition to that, the department has established what is called an interim screen. And that is a process to ensure that to assist in preventing any sort of actual or perceived conflict of interest. So what an interim screen does, it indicates those areas where the conflict or the Chief of Staff may be involved in files where she may not be, and also it sets up some logistical procedures to ensure that document flow respects those sorts of guidelines and provisions. So this is what we have developed in the department, and that has been and that's in effect.
Has the commissioner reviewed that screen?
No.
No. Okay. Thank you.
So thank you. Thank you very much, and I guess that will conclude our panel with the minister. I want to thank the minister very much for coming and appearing to the committee early in this mandate, and we can assure you that our full cooperation as a committee to face the challenge and the concerns and the opportunities that lies ahead for us, and I'm sure you'll have the cooperation of this full committee. So thank you, Mr. Minister, and I want to also thank your deputy ministers, Mr. Meredith, Madame Lyon, Mr. Corriveau, and also CFIA Representative Mr. Mayers. So thank you very much. I don't know if you want a short
No, I just
statement.
want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for a lively discussion. It's great. That's what it's all about. Everybody's got a right to know. That's one thing about this country. You got the right to know. And it's a pleasure being here, and I suspect, and I must say I'm very pleased to see Mr. Passant, my parliamentary secretary here, who, it's quite a setup. I have great difficulty with French, and he has some difficulty with English, but we still get along. Thank you.
So thank you, and we will now suspend the meeting for a few minutes to change the panel. We will afterwards have the main estimates, the staff to explain us the main estimates. So 2 or 3 minutes if you want to just stretch your leg, and we'll be back. our second hour of a panel. And this time around, we have staff from Agriculture Canada to talk about the main estimates. So we will start right away. So I will give you an opening statement if you wish to start, and then we will continue with the questions.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we'll pass on the opening statement and give members more time for questions.
Okay, so we'll start with Mr. Arnold. You have 6 minutes.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to thank the staff for being here today. I initially hoped for these questions to the minister, but I'm hoping maybe you can answer them. Fruit growers, I come from North Okanagan, Shuswap, central British Columbia, very diverse agricultural area, everything from goat cheese to vineyards and some of the finest wine in the world. But one area that's popped up with my constituents, fruit growers in the area have been able to make use of the temporary farm workers program to bring in fruit pickers on a seasonal basis. But the limit that they are finding is that the countries of origin for these workers is only Mexico and the Caribbean. It's created significant language barriers because the not English to Spanish, but other languages to Spanish, because the farm owners and their main workers speak a second language, or their first language is something other than English. I'm just wondering if the ministry is looking at doing any research or expansion of that program to include other countries so that the language barrier isn't a challenge to them.
So thank you for the question. I think it's fair to say that we are not, as a department, doing any specific research on the language question, but we are very sensitive to the need for the temporary foreign worker program to work effectively in all its streams. And so you're talking about one specific stream of the temporary foreign worker program. The minister, as mentioned, has had several discussions with his colleague, Minister Mihaichuk. And the minister herself has indicated that she wants to bring questions about the temporary foreign worker program to committee to have it examined to see how it's working. And we can raise this issue. It's the first time, I have to admit, that I've heard about the language barrier being a serious problem.
Okay, I will definitely follow up then with a letter to your ministry regarding this issue, because it's become a fairly significant issue for them, the language barrier. Second question I've got is regarding the movement of grain. In 2014, it became a significant issue, and then steps were taken to improve the rail movement of grain to our ports, and that helped in that respect, but then we understand it became a bottleneck at the elevators at the ports. They simply couldn't handle the volumes that were coming in. Is there anything in the main estimates now coming forward being directed towards either studying that or resolving that issue in some way so that we can effectively get our farmers' products to the markets overseas?
So there's nothing specific in the main estimates, unless my colleague corrects me, but this government is very attentive to the problems of grain transport, and you're quite right. It's a potentially acute problem when you have issues like happened in 2013-14, which was a record crop and a record cold winter, resulting in very significant backlogs, primarily in inland terminals. There were temporary measures taken by the then government of the day. Some of those measures will end August 1st, 2016, unless they're extended by Parliament. My minister has spent a great deal of time talking to stakeholders and getting feedback from stakeholders on the issue of extending those provisions, as well as longer-term solutions with respect to the Canadian transportation system. And as you're probably aware, the Canadian Transportation Act was recently reviewed by an expert panel who submitted their report to the Minister of Transport, and he has submitted it to Parliament, and now it's public. Contains a number of wide-ranging recommendations with respect to transportation, not strictly grain, but a great many of them deal either specifically with grain transportation or more broadly with rail freight shipping. The government's undertaken to consult extensively on that report, including in the minister's mandate letter a commitment that the Prime Minister's given my minister to look at the grain supply chain in a fulsome way with the Minister of Transport in the context of responding to the CTA review.
More time?
We still got a minute.
Okay. The almost $17.5 million earmarked for the Agri-Risk Initiatives Program, including $16.5 million in transfer amounts. This is a 40% higher than previous budget amounts. Can you explain the reason for this increase, the background behind it?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll attempt to answer that question. The Agri-Risk Program is a new program that was included as part of the Business Risk Management suite of programs under the current Growing Forward 2 framework. And as a result, since it's the first time this program has been put in place, there was a decision made at the time to ramp up the funding for the program. So you'll see, like the funding increase last year, there's an increase this coming fiscal year, and there'll be an increase again in the final year of the program. And that was an intentional decision at the time because it was a new program, and the thought was there needed to be a bit of work done to actually incent demand against that program. And so that's why you see, additional levels of investment in the program going forward.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Arnold. Maintenant, Monsieur Drouin pour 6 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur.
6 minutes. Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank our witnesses for being here today. Before asking my question, Mr. Chair, I think it's important. It was mentioned earlier that the Minister's Chief of Staff seems not to be able to take care of her functions adequately, and I think it's very important that people understand in the committee that there is a process in place to protect individuals who are in a situation of conflict of interest. Moreover, there's no one in the agricultural community who said, "Oh dear, there's someone in the minister's office who understands us." No one has said that. I believe that the agricultural community is very happy that someone is working here who understands the field. So I'd like to give the parliamentary secretary a couple of minutes to explain the process he traversed to ensure that he doesn't have a conflict of interest, because he's also a dairy producer. Mr. Boisson. Thank you, Chair. As Francis so well said it, when I was appointed as parliamentary secretary, I underwent an ethical process. The commissioner got in touch with me and asked me about my agricultural assets and my companies. I have 2 companies. And I went through the business administration process. Whatever the size of the business, of course, we're not talking about huge sums like we mentioned earlier, but whatever the size of the business, I need to ensure that I'm complying with ethical requirements. I believe that's what the government needs to do. It needs to be transparent in everything it does.
The witnesses that are here, just as we're embarking in the consultation process for moving it to beyond a post-growing forward to, what's the process does the department undertake in terms of negotiating or speaking with provinces, and how long does that take in general?
So you're right. We are now sort of embarking on that engagement process, and you'll recall, I think, my last visit here, we spoke briefly about the shared jurisdiction that agriculture experiences. So both the federal and provincial governments have responsibility, which imposes on governments the obligation to ensure that, as much as possible, policies and programs are aligned, and the policy frameworks that we put in place are negotiated with provinces for that reason, to ensure that we have policy alignment, that we're all pulling in the right direction, and that we remain responsive to to local needs. So the process that we would pursue will bring us from where we are roughly now through to April 1st, 2018, which would be the implementation of the new framework. The minister has this obligation in his mandate letter. He will be spending some time between now and July of 2016 discussing with the sector where they want to go and what priorities they want to bring to bear. July 2016 is important because ministers will be meeting in Calgary, and one of the issues that will be on the table will be the next policy framework and where ministers as a collective see that framework going. So I think it's fair to say that our minister has made a commitment. I believe it'll be shared by all ministers to engage the sector in a fairly robust way between July and any time when programs and policies get put in place. So what you'll see, I think, is a process of officials and ministers engaging the sector at the federal level and within each province and jointly.
Great, thank you. And when you are embarking in this process, is it normal customs for yourself, or is there an ADM's working group along with your provincial counterparts, or is this done mostly at the ministerial level?
Well, I would say that ministers are very involved. For example, in their annual meeting, our minister will be speaking to his colleagues in the next short while about one issue will be the next policy framework on the table. But to get all this work done, there's a lot of back office activity, as you can imagine. And yes, I chair a committee of assistant deputy ministers whose responsibility is to bring forward ideas for ministers to deal with, and supporting that is a fairly methodical network of people who are responsible for putting the detail of a potential next framework in place.
Thanks, and I'm just where I'm coming from is I've heard from a few farmers. It's mostly the younger ones. They they appreciate the programs, but they are looking at reducing maybe the younger people they don't ask where's the form for that, they ask where's the app for that. And I know that we federal government funds these programs but don't necessarily deliver them. So how can we ensure that input is put into the process with our provincial counterparts? And how does the federal government have any say in terms of how we deliver the program, or is that mostly left up to each provinces?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. So I think the last time that I was before committee, I talked about the fact that under our current framework, there are programs that are delivered at the federal level, and definitely we federally then have a lot of input into the design and whether or not those programs are delivered by us directly or indirectly through a third party. And I would say when you talk about the business risk management suite of programs, those are the ones where sometimes we do involve third parties. At the federal level, our federal-only voted programs are delivered exclusively by the federal government. At the provincial level, the $2 billion that we talked about the last time in cost-shared programming, it's really up to the provinces to decide how they will design and deliver those programs. But I must say, in the context of discussions that we do have with the provinces and territories, we do have, as part of those discussions, an emphasis on service delivery. And certainly at the federal level, we're quite focused on how is it that we can actually improve the way in which we deliver those programs, including the adoption of technology and tools. And I think, we certainly recognize that when you think about your clients, they definitely have an expectation that they would be able to interface with the federal government the same way that they can interface with other service providers, such as banks. I mean, a lot of people do online banking, for example, and we definitely have some technological tools that we now have at our disposal that would allow for online application, for example, to a number of our federal-only programs.
So thank you very much, Ms. Namiski. We're going to have to move on.
Thank you.
Merci, Monsieur Drouin. Alors, Madame Brosseau, à vous pour 6 minutes.
Ms. Brosseau, thank you, Chair. It's always a pleasure to receive you here in the committee. I wanted to ask Mr. Sipi a question. The Minister of International Trade stated that she wished CETA to enter into force in 2017. Can you tell me whether compensation for dairy producers will be included in supplementary estimates? These are the main estimates, actually. And currently, there is no new element with regard to that commitment.
Frederick Seppi, who's younger and more handsome, and so I understand, but I'll have to hazard an answer. The minister, I think, has been fairly clear that the government is very aware of the need for compensation in the context of CETA and the TPP. He has tasked myself and others to engage with the industry to understand their perspectives on some of the proposals that the previous government had on the table. We've been spending a great deal of time doing that, so that the design of any compensation package in the future will reflect the needs and priorities of the sector.
Okay. I was at committee when we had the, I think it was C30, the bill to kind of help facilitate grain transport. You did mention that a lot of, well, some provisions will be sunsetting in August, and it has to go before Parliament. Is there any way, does it have to come before Parliament to keep those changes in place, or can it be done by a directive of the minister to keep some of those provisions?
It's an order in council that has to come and be passed by both houses, so House of Commons and the Senate.
Okay. Donc, l'importance de consulter avec.
So, it's important to consult with industry and ensure that this problem will not occur once again. Now, when it comes to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, I know that it's the minister's principal responsibility, the health minister's principal responsibility. But recently, surveys among employees showed that 55% believe that current standards are not adequate. We want to raise awareness with the minister with regard to the importance of acting and of evaluating the agency to ensure that it has all the necessary resources. The Liberal Party promised to inject about $80 million into the agency, but the former government cut the budget by $56 million a year. Do you believe that it would be better to hold an evaluation currently? I believe there was an assessment scheduled for 2017, but I believe it's important to act. Because when there's specialists working inside the agency who are saying there's a crisis approaching, it's absolutely critical for the government to take that seriously.
This really is, Mr. Chair, sort of out of the competence that that I or my colleagues could. But Paul Mayer, being ahead of me, has graciously joined us at the table. He can probably provide a response.
Just briefly, thank you for the question, and so as to avoid that my colleagues are attempting to speak on behalf of the agency, I know that puts them in an awkward position. As it relates to the issue of the resource profile in the agency, of course, the commitment on the part of the government is a matter of policy, and I won't comment with respect to that matter. However, as it relates to the issue of current resources for the agency, again, I'll note, as I did earlier, with the information that we provided to this committee, that since the listeriosis event in 2008, the agency's frontline inspection resources have been significantly increased, a very strong commitment on the agency's part in terms of frontline inspection. I certainly am very aware of the polling that you refer to, and as an agency, we will pay very close attention to the views of our staff, but at the same time, we'll also work with the resources that were allocated. We bring a very strong focus in the agency on prioritizing our action in relation to risk and to focusing on delivering frontline inspection in relation to those risks, and the actions on the part of the agency in delivering for Canadians have been recognized, not just domestically, but in the international context. The Conference Board of Canada's review of OECD member countries' food safety systems has ranked Canada #1, along with the Irish food safety system, and we're proud of that outcome. We don't rest on those laurels. We continue to focus on continuous improvement, and we will take very seriously any of the views of our own staff in terms of where opportunities are for continuous improvement. But I can assure you that our commitment to food safety outcomes for Canadians will continue to be paramount.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayers. Merci, Madame Brosseau. Je pense que le temps est coulé. Mr. Longfield for 6 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again, staff. We're meeting often, so in getting our first foot forward properly is very important for this committee. Looking at the estimates, my questions to the minister had more to do with the technology and the application of technology. I want to touch on that after my first part of my question has to do with the increase in the federal infrastructure initiative of $32.1 million, and wondering whether any of that infrastructure, I know these are main estimates, but whether any of that infrastructure might have to do with broadband in rural areas or the access to infrastructure that can help people implement technologies. I know that has been a concern in rural Canada. Whether that's another department.
Mr. Chair. So the $32 million federal infrastructure, in fact, is for the infrastructure that's owned entirely by the department. So this is for the science capacity internal to the department, like our research lab in Guelph, for example.
That was a great example, by the way.
Thank you.
And hopefully we can work together on further research labs around beside the Dairy Center. That's for another conversation as well. I guess then that maybe has answered the second part of my question, and that was around the research that could be implemented at farms or the applied technology at farms. What your interaction is with the maybe other industry or other ministries such as innovation or science and technology, and how this kind of works within the machinery of your department. And I'm new to government, so I'm just trying to understand the machine here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I'll just make an attempt to answer the question. What we do in this particular case for research in agriculture and agri-food is we work in a concerted manner with industry as well with provinces, which is part of the joint framework that we have with them. So we do a lot of our research in collaboration with industry. In this case, it's stakeholders, which basically producer organization and all of that. They give us a lot of insights of where their issues are and all of that. Then we work with universities under some partnership arrangement that we have with that we can work on science cluster as well as on the research projects, and we try to work in a kind of focused way on particular issues as identified by industry and as well as what we have identified ourselves as well.
So, and that's what we could expect on the next level of funding after Growing Forward 2 is an extension, I guess, if you will, of what's been going on under Growing Forward 2.
Well, I don't know if I can predict exactly what's going to come in the next framework, but obviously what we've heard a lot at committees and people when they talk to us is they see a lot of merit in these research and partnerships and the research that are lying along clusters or projects. So they really like the mechanics and the progress we've been able to make with these large projects in a kind of concerted and coherent manner. So I think that's what we expect that they'll continue to say, and we may see that in the next framework. But I cannot really make a prediction at this point in time.
No, I understand that as well, and it's ongoing. And maybe is there a connection or an example of connection between this department and the other departments I mentioned, like science and technology or innovation, or do they work pretty much autonomously?
No, I think there is a lot happening interdepartmentally. The example maybe I will give you would be on the area of genomics research that we do with all the other departments within the government of Canada under the genomic research and development initiatives, and we have two large projects that we'll be launching shortly. One on antimicrobial resistance, and the other one is on the ecobiomics, which is the microbiome that you have in the first foot of soil that you see around the country.
Terrific.
So those are examples of it that we do in partnership with 6 or 7 other departments, as a matter of fact.
Terrific. Thank you for that, and thanks for being here again.
Alors, Monsieur Breton.
Mr. Breton. Thank you, Chair. I'm particularly interested in initiatives that have to do with improving productivity, everything that has to do with innovation projects and programs. Can you tell us a little bit about programs that exist or that have been increased during this current fiscal?
The estimates, that's the method by which we are appropriated and receive the funding that supports all of the programs that we deliver. So in the context of the current agricultural policy framework, we of course have 3 major programs that we deliver federally, one of them being the Agri-Innovation Program, one of them being the Agri-Marketing Program, and the third one being the Agri-Competitiveness Program. But in addition to that, we have a few programs that fall outside the framework of our agricultural policy framework. And in terms of the Agri-Innovation Program in particular, it is the program that supports the funding of research and development. And that funding is often provided. We support, for example, science clusters, and we have 14 of those science clusters, and that funding can flow over a 5-year period. They're quite large projects that support research and development that ultimately, at the end of the day, will be of benefit to producers that are, for example, we have a cluster in beef cluster, and the intention is over time that research will actually translate and actually migrate at some point on farm and help producers that produce that particular commodity, and that would be true of all of our research clusters. In addition, we support a variety of research and development projects that are often shorter in duration and much more focused. And again, the intention is really to have the results of those research projects transition over time and play out at a farm level. Not every one of them happens immediately. Sometimes it takes a period of time for those for the research to actually translate into to a point where you actually can commercialize it and apply it on farm. And of course, all of our provinces and territories, they too fund innovation programming through the cost-shared strategic initiatives funding that's provided to them. And again, that would be programming that would support at a local and regional level projects that would again be of benefit to the sector in all parts of the country. So it's a comprehensive framework that provides support to individual projects that ultimately are supporting our producers.
Merci beaucoup pour la réponse exhaustive. Parfait.
Thank you for that very in-depth answer. Let's now move on to Mr. Gould. 6 minutes Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a question, but before that, I'd like to go back to what Francis said. After the appointment, congratulations, your appointment as Parliamentary Secretary for Agriculture, in the Ethics Code, there are special provisions. After your appointment, you become responsible for the public service. So we do need specific and extraordinary provisions since you are an elected official. But ultimately, a chief of staff is also responsible for the public service, but is not an elected official. So I do feel that one should check whether it's the same standards. I would think that it isn't the same thing, because if it's someone who's hired by cabinet, or rather by a member's office, then it's not an elected official. Because after all, there are extraordinary provisions for elected officials, since you don't want to disqualify them just because they own agricultural assets. So if you want to clarify that later, but not right now, because I want to keep my time for another question. A few weeks ago, you spoke about a very important niche in agriculture, which I hear a lot about these days. That's maple syrup. In the Gagnon report in Quebec, there's an issue. Americans are increasing their maple syrup production. In the Gagnon report, it stated that there's subsidies in that sector for Americans so that they can increase their maple syrup production. We don't do that because we respect free trade regulations. If Americans are doing that, are subsidizing production indirectly or directly, because there are many different ways of doing that. You can subsidize the roads to get to the stands of maple trees. You can subsidize electricity. So I asked the department to check whether maple syrup production in the States was being subsidized directly or indirectly. And if so, whether they respect NAFTA rules. Thank you for this question. Now, I wasn't aware of that request that you made to the department, but we can definitely look into that if the committee requests it. As you know, the American Farm Bill is a very broad piece of legislation with various elements. And there are all sorts of elements of the Farm Bill that we're always keeping up to date on to ensure that they don't have negative repercussions on our agricultural sectors, and also to ensure that it respects regulation. So on that aspect, specifically when it comes to subsidies to the American maple syrup industry, I can't give you information on that specifically right now, whether it is a compliance issue under NAFTA or under WTO regulations, but we do have the capacity to look into that. Given that maple syrup products are symbolic for Canada, we do support that sector in different ways, whether it be in terms of developing foreign markets, developing innovative farm practices, etc. So we attempt to assist that sector as much as possible. Hopefully, the Americans are doing it in that same spirit of compliance with international rules. Another question. There is a federal-provincial program, and the federal government is paying 94% of that. It's a program to purchase maple processing equipment to create maple syrup water. Does this program has a way to help our producers to go through the higher level of processing, to improve their sector, to find new products, and to increase the volume of existing products? I think that's a Quebec program. I don't think it's a federal program. I think it's a federal provincial program. I announced it myself, and it's administered by the Quebec Agriculture Ministry. But this program is paid for by the federal government up to 94%, and 6% is paid by the provincial government, but that's merely administrative. So the money that goes directly to the actual producers and processors comes from the federal government. Could you please check that and come back to us about that? Could you tell us if there's any flexibility within that program to help our maple syrup producers? Yes, Mr. Chair, perhaps we can follow up with that. I would like to get answers for both of those things because 3 committee meetings ago I asked those questions. And this time, if we don't get the answers, we're going to insist more strongly.
Gentlemen, lady, thank you for appearing, for I think most of you, again, in front of the committee. I'd like to follow up with a little bit on Mr. Breton's question and make it more specific to British Columbia and Metro Vancouver. There's a variety of very good programs, the Agri-Trinity that you talked about, innovation, marketing and competition. There's also the shared program with the province of BC. As you know, in British Columbia, the big movement about 10, 15 years ago, which I think now is expanding, was on a regional security food agenda, which started out small scale, farmers market, but now is very lucrative and includes the whole of the Pacific Northwest, and we've reached a point, I think, of a critical mass where we can start exporting beyond simply California, Washington, and Oregon. If I were to ask specifically, how could we work within these clusters that you have? I asked the Minister about a program at Kwantlen. If I would want to create a research center dealing with mixed farming that would look at how we can expand and make more commercially viable our security policy for British Columbia, that whole area, how would I go about it? And maybe I'm also following up on Mr. Longfield's question. How would I go about doing that? There you go.
Thank you for the question. I think it's there are probably different ways of going after this, but it's also dealing with the United States, and in this case, that might be some approach that would have some merit there. And we do talk to United States, the USDA ARS, the research arms of USDA every year, and we identify areas of priority. That would be maybe a place where I would go first to see, is there anything in the Pacific Northwest, because they have a significant presence and footprint there. Is there anything we can do together, like bilaterally with them, and we meet them like quite routinely? That might be one place where we would go. But
for interrupting, but I'm going to do it anyways. What if I wanted to create or help create the folks in BC or my area, a research center to study what I just talked about? How would I go about that? Who would I talk to? We'll leave the Americans out of it for now. And how can I work with the existing structures, all these wonderful programs, to create a research center at Kwantlen, working with UBC or other institutions of education in BC?
What I'd like to add on this is maybe perhaps within the province of British Columbia, like I would refer to this as a virtual research centers, and because we have structure federally, there are structures like provincially, universities, and also the Ministry of Agriculture and Forestry. They do have some facilities, and we have the Canadian Food Inspection Agency that is also on the ground there. So there might be a ways to mobilize industry. We would work with existing programs that we have, like agri-innovation, like we have on clusters and projects that could be led by some particular areas, and we would just mobilize these people and work in partnership, but it would be a virtual arrangement. And that's basically what agri-innovation programming is all about. It just allows us to mobilize the people across various jurisdictions, federal, provincial, universities as well, and industry. And we can work together on these projects.
I see. So there isn't a program where I have scientists, I have professors, I have young farmers who want to get into the industry. There isn't a program where we can get some funds and actually start a research center at Kwantlen, or tie it up with Simon Fraser and UBC to look at this stuff?
We would have, maybe, Tina, we would have to look into the eligibility for these programs.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. One other question I wanted to ask, if I have a moment, there are also farmers in the area that are bypassing the processor. So what they do is they do direct marketing, and it's very lucrative, whether it's in potatoes or in chickens or in whatever. And they're doing this on their own. They have a niche market because there's a safety issue, there's maybe animal welfare issues, so people want to buy the products. And they're in my riding, they're all over, actually, I'd say Metro Vancouver, Chilliwack, the whole area there. Are there any programs that we can help these individual farmers who are doing direct marketing and maybe tie it into how the department functions in its view of agriculture?
So, Mr. Chairman, maybe I can attempt to answer that question. So under our market development stream of programming that's offered at the federal level, we have what we refer to as generic market development, as well as market development support that we provide to small and medium-sized enterprises. So generic market development is really targeted at associations that represent whether it's commodity or a part of the sector. But the small and medium-sized component of our agri-marketing program allows us to deal specifically, with a smaller organization that is working on their own behalf to market their product abroad. There are some eligibility requirements around that. So typically, it's an organization that has less than 250 employees and annual sales that don't exceed $50 million. But through that stream, we're able to provide in-year funding to a small and medium-sized enterprise to enable them to actually market their product abroad.
Thank you, Mrs. Nowinski. Merci, Mr. Pesci-Solido. And now, Monsieur Good for 5 minutes. Oh, okay, Mr. Arnold. Okay.
I've got one question, and then I may pass it on to Mr. Aboutif. I look at the estimate sheets, and everything seems to be fairly consistent there, but what I usually do in these sheets is look for anomalies. And one that I've really spotted is the community pastures program, a significant cut in the FTE positions from 133 down to 90. That's 43 positions. Perhaps you can explain why that large cut?
Thank you for the question. From an FTE point of view, as you know, the government announced in the budget 2012 with the gradual transfer to the various provinces, Manitoba and Saskatchewan in particular, of the community pasture program. So this reflects the gradual reduction over 5 years. So now we're in year 3, and my colleague here, Tina, who's managing this program, can provide you with more details.
So, Mr. Chairman, we now find ourselves in year 3 of a 5-year divestiture process. And so at this point in time, the Government of Canada has ceased operating federal community pastures in the province of Manitoba. We're still engaged in the province of Saskatchewan, although in keeping with the divestiture schedule, by the end of March of 2018, we will have ceased the operation of federal pastures in the province of Saskatchewan as well, and we have staff that continue to work in the pasture operation until that period of time. So we continue to run those pastures on the land that has yet to be divested back to the province, and we'll continue to do so until we cease the operation of the federal.
Okay, thank you. Just one other quick one, possibly. The fostering business development also, it's under the industry capacity main title, but fostering business development, again, I see a loss of from 13 down to 6 in FTEs. That's more than cut more than half. Is that part of a transfer to the Growing Forward 2 program, or can you explain that fairly significant cut? It's in Table 3 of the document we were provided.
maybe we'll get back to the chair, or I can look for the answer while we, maybe my colleague can talk about the program per se.
So, Mr. Chair, we do have under our agri-competitiveness program stream, we have a stream that's referred to as fostering business development, and that is a stream that provides $15.6 million in contribution funding over 5 years to not-for-profit organizations that operate nationally and have experience in delivering services and products for farmers and producers. And for example, that would include 4-H as one of those organizations that we support under that program. And so that's those are agreements that we entered into at the start of the agricultural policy framework, and they will continue until the end of the framework. So those agreements with those organizations last for 5 years.
I think we'll have to get back to you in more detail, but I think at the time of production of the RPP, that program hadn't been renewed per se, so I think that's the adjustment from the FD perspective, but we'll get back to you on this.
I'd appreciate the answer on that, and if I've got any time left, I'll pass it on to my colleague.
Sure. A quick question. Since the 2013-14 fiscal year, spending on internal services has increased for the CGC. Internal services include activities that support and enable delivery of the CGC's strategic outcome and programs to the CGC stakeholders. Can you explain why spending has increased?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good question. There is no official from the CGC, but that we work collaboratively between the two organizations. So in the past, the department used to provide the Human Resources Service to the Grain Commission, but they're really like a separate entity from the department. So this reflects basically the Canadian Grain Commission take on the responsibility for delivery of their human resources to their own organization.
So, Madame Brosseau, vous avez 3 minutes.
3 minutes from Ms. Brosseau. I didn't expect to be able to ask more questions, but I do have another one. I often ask questions, on both sides ask questions about milk proteins. Do you think that the Canadian Dairy Commission will have the necessary resources to control standards or not? Can I ask you that? Well, thank you for that question. As the Minister mentioned, the responsibility for regulation is, well, when it comes to the composition rules for cheese, that's the Canadian Food Inspection Agency's responsibility. So the CDC's jurisdiction and the arrangements that can take place, well, that does occur sometimes, but ultimately the responsibility can't really be delegated. It's really the CFIA's responsibility. But could the CDC carry out those checks nonetheless? As Dairy Farmers of Canada and other witnesses mentioned, who were suggesting possible changes to end the import of milk proteins, that was a recommendation. Can you not comment on that further? Well, it's ultimately a question that has to do with the CFIA, and as a regulatory agency, it's their responsibility to look at that kind of option. It's not possible for the department to take care of that. Thank you, Ruth Ellen. Earlier, you mentioned the consultations that will take place between now and July 2016 for the next agricultural framework. I believe you've already started to hear some of the expectations and comments about that, specifically about the agricultural future. For the department, what are your thoughts about this? Could that be included in a future framework to improve support for future agricultural workers?
Governments are open to a number of suggestions on the design and implementation of the next policy framework. I personally haven't heard those specific comments, but I have a high degree of confidence that the sector is very prepared to provide us feedback. We've been through this process with the sector now since 2003, so 3 times already, and this will be a fourth. What we've seen already is that national and provincial organizations, both the horizontal and the commodity specific, have already developed positions. They've already made themselves available to ministers and to officials, and they'll continue to, I think, engage us on a very wide front. So it may well come up.
Thank you. Merci. Alors, if I can permit myself to ask a quick question before we finish this, if the committee will permit me, we're all okay? I just want to ask, with the trade agreements that we're getting ready to sign, do you see any changes or potential changes to the way we deliver the program? Do you see right now, with the, I don't know how much time you've had to look at those trade agreements, but do you see any things, flags that might change the way we deliver our program? And just a quick answer, because we are.
So I think the quick answer is in my minister's mandate letter, where he's tasked to help the Minister of Trade prepare to take advantage of trade agreements that we're entering into. So there may be some evolution.
Thank you very much. So this concludes our question period for the panel. I thank you very much for coming here and answering our questions. And I'm sure we'll meet again as we pursue our committee work. So thank you. Merci tout le monde. Alors, we're going to have 5 minutes to approve the motion. If the committee wants to stay here for a few minutes, it'll just take to approve the motion for the estimate committee. So just give time for. We'll start on the motion that needs to be adopted. Main estimates 2016-17 pursuant to Standing Order 81-5. The main estimates 2016-17 votes 1, 5, and 10 under Agriculture and Agri-Food. Vote 1 under Canadian Dairy Commission. Vote 1 under Canadian Grain Commission were referred to committee on February 23rd, 2016. Okay. So now for the motions that we need, shall vote 1 under Agriculture and Agri-Food carry. All for, against, motion carried. Shall vote 5 under Agriculture and Agri-Food carry. Carry. All in favor? Against? Motion carried. Shall vote 10 under Agriculture and Agri-Food carry. We're all in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Shall vote 1 under Canadian Dairy Commission carry. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Shall vote 1 under Canadian Grain Commission carry. All in favor? Against? Motion carried. And finally, shall vote 1 the main estimates 2016-17 to the. Shall I report the main estimates 2016-2017 to the House? Yes. Yes. So all in favor, and yes, and the contrary, nay. So we're good. Thank you very much. Motion carried. So thank you. This concludes our meeting for today.